All right. Well, as you can see, the Bronco is back. The history of Ford's legendary SUV. So I'm Alan Taylor, and I work with Barrett Jackson, and I want to welcome everybody to our symposiums. It's a Behind the Hobby Collector Car Symposium, and we do these every morning from 9 to 11. Actually, 9 to 10 is a symposium, and 10 to 11 is our celebrity interview. Today, I believe it's going to be Wayne Carini from Chasing Classic Cars. We're also broadcasting worldwide on the internet, so you know, the whole world gets to watch this, and it's kind of fun because people from around the world send me little notes like, hey man, I'm watching, you guys look like you're having fun. Anyway, welcome again to Barrett Jackson 2019 Scottsdale. I'm Alan Taylor. My co-host for the day is going to be Seth Burgett, and he is with Gateway Bronco, and all I can tell you is if you haven't been to his display out there, you got to see some of the most beautiful Broncos ever in the world. I mean, all I can say is, Seth, you guys do such a fantastic job that it's almost without words. That, you know, car enthusiasts like all of us, see what you guys have done. What you've done, first of all, is astronomical. I mean, it's something that somebody go, no way, because Broncos are kind of like hen's teeth. They're not just out there everywhere, and you're finding amazing, amazing vehicles and restoring them to better than new, which is really cool. So give it up for Seth Burgett, guys, because he's going to really lead the way here.
Well, thank you, Alan. I would say that our guys deserve all the credit. We've got our shop manager, our manager of fabrication, a couple of other guys here. They deserve all the credit in how good these trucks look and how well they run. But Katie, what I'd say, let's go on and let's look at the bios of this esteemed cast of characters here. And I'm going to start off with Gary Patterson. Gary is president of Shelby American and becoming a dear friend, and just love this guy to death. He is fantastic, full of energy every time I see him, and nothing but fun. Chief fun factor, I think, is what he is. So Shelby American. We've got Michael Dorvier. Michael has become a friend over time, and Michael is chairman of the La Jolla Concours. And so looking at this from the Concours perspective, how does he see the Broncos, and where does he see things like this going at a Concours d'Elegance? We've got Willie Strop. For those who don't know, Willie Strop is part of Strop & Son and was a major part of bringing the Bronco into the mainstream, racing Baja Broncos, winning just about every imaginable record there was with the Big Ole, probably the most famous Bronco on the planet. And so thrilled to have Willie here. Just a great pleasure to have him here. We've got Dennis Collins. Very little to be said here with Dennis. I think everybody knows who Dennis is. Dennis has just a fantastic business with Collins Brothers Jeep, and just a great pleasure to have you here, Dennis, and can't wait to hear what you've got to say.
You probably have seen him also on television on Fast and Loud, his best buddy being Richard Rollins from Fast and Loud, Gas Monkey Garage, and also this guy here is one of those guys that knows about every vehicle. He could be on every one of these stages, and it's kind of fun because a lot of people think he's one of those wild and crazy Fast and Loud Gas Monkey guys. There's the brains of the outfit right there.
Well, seriously, Dennis, that's what I've come to respect about you. You know, when we met in Dallas and talked, I just couldn't believe the amount of knowledge that you have about every possible collector car, and just really respect that a lot. Just a great businessman.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here.
You're welcome. Aaron Shelby, thank you so much for joining us. Director of Board of Directors for Shelby American and grandson to Carol Shelby. Just really came to know Aaron over time with the first Bronco. And it's just been a joy to get to know Aaron a bit over time. And thank you so much for joining us. Yeah? Todd Zerker? Todd Zerker. Todd is a historian, a Baja racer, active Baja racer in vintage Broncos, and just wrote a book on the Bronco. I started the book. I definitely couldn't finish this book. I handed it back to the publisher, and they said, we know the man to take this over, and Todd is definitely the guy to take this. He is an unbelievable historian around the Bronco, the Strop Bronco in particular, and so we're just thrilled to have him here as a part of this panel. Vinny Yakobanski. Vinny is the second owner of the first Bronco. So Vinny gives me this email that I didn't believe, and I'll tell the full story later, about the first Bronco. And he said, I've got the first Bronco, and it's a prototype. Would you like to talk? And I really didn't believe him at first. It took a couple of tries before I believed it, and Vinny paid $100 to the Shelby Ranch in Terlingua, Texas, for the first Bronco.
What?
Yes, sir.
I'll give you double. He did. He gave me double.
Well, I would say that, you know, Vinny played this little trick here. So one is the first night of negotiation, we hit my tap-out price, and Vinny said, you know what, I don't think I'm ready to sell this truck, and he kind of teared up a bit, and it wasn't the right time. So I said, okay, Vinny, it's an emotional sale. I understand. And so I went on about my business in Texas, and we're starting our story early here, I suppose. And then Vinny calls me the next morning, and he doubles my tap-out price. And I thought, oh, my goodness, what do I do? And 10 minutes later, I wired the money, and it's a done deal. So
you're the third owner of the first Bronco.
We are the third owner of the first Bronco.
How cool.
And, you know, the thing that he did is I was down in South Texas, went back up to where he was to pick up the Bronco, and he said, you know, I got a little surprise for you. We get the Bronco loaded in the trailer, I've got a little surprise for you. So I didn't know. I knew he paid $100 for it. I didn't know he had the actual check signed on the back by Carol Shelby's business partner. And, yeah, DeWitt. And then we had the original registration, the little registration from High Performance Motors in California. He had the original paper. And, you know, so the coolest thing was we loaded this thing in the trailer, and he brings out the paper. I think he actually went back to the house. He went back to the house from the barn, and he got the paperwork and laid it out there. And I was like, oh, my goodness, my eyes were just about to bug out of my head. It was so good, and it was a special time.
Can I ask, you know, you just put out a press release, and maybe we should start here with Seth and Ford Motor Company. And I think that was a big deal and is worthy of, you know, maybe bringing it up. You wouldn't maybe do it, but I can. Talk about what you just did.
Well, I appreciate that, Alan. This was a press release around Ford licensing our company, Gateway Bronco, to be able to build the first generation Bronco as a restoration or to build it brand new. And so in our booth, we have a brand new Bronco built in 2018, all new metal, all new frame, everything is new. And it's all licensed by Ford. And so we're the world's first to have this license, the world's only to have this license.
Bronco is back.
The Bronco is back. And so we can build everyone a brand new Bronco, and we can build it to look like it's old, but it's got brand new technology inside. And we've got our owner here. Justin will be here for a press conference at our booth at 11:30, where a handful of these folks will be there. And Vinny can tell some more stories about the first Bronco.
That is very cool. Well, let's get rolling. And a lot of people want to know about the Broncos and this firstbronco.com. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about firstbronco.com.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, one of the things that we would like to be able to do is to learn more about this first Bronco. I mean, Vinny owned this thing for, what, 39 years?
Yes.
Yeah, so 39 years Vinny owned this Bronco, and from 77 until really 2016.
Let him grab that mic from you right there. Yeah.
I owned it from 1978
78
to 2016. And I took that Bronco, I took it in on a trade for a 78. That's why I can remember it's 78.
Look at that.
So this is Vinny's first picture that he sent me, and it's got a cattle guard on the front of it. That's just the way it came off the ranch in Terlingua, and that's the High Performance Motors registration there, and all zeros in the VIN. So
awesome.
Tell us about that picture a little bit, Vinny. What was going on there? And I think there's another one with a motorcycle stuck in the back of that little Bronco.
Right. That picture there was taken after I bought a brand new set of tires and wheels, because I told old Harold Wynn that had the ranch, I told him I'd give him $100 for the Bronco. And he said, well, hell, it's got $100 worth of tires and wheels on there. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, Harold, we'll just take the tires and wheels off and put them in the back of your pickup, and I'll still give you $100 for it. And the Bronco was red. I took the grill off. I didn't like the grill guard, but The Bronco's pretty much original as you see it there, except in '79 I painted it silver and blue, as I had a '79 Ford Super Cab that was the same color.
Let me ask you, when did you find out it was number one? And how did you find out?
How we found out was Harold was bringing it into the shop, and it was just always tore up. And the starter was always going out. And I think, if I can remember the story right, the ring gear that we were putting on that engine was the wrong ring gear. And so once we figured out what ring gear went on the flywheel, well, then it would start and it wouldn't tear up the starters. And how I found out it was all zeros, we looked in the parts book, and the parts book says, 7360001. And, this was all zeros. So I went, what's going on here? Well, there was a mechanic down the street named Elmer McMillan, who was a diesel mechanic, and he worked on that truck prior to me working on it. I just started that dealership and I was hungry and I needed the money, and so I worked on that truck. But Elmer, he came down the street. His shop was just down the street from mine, and he came down there one day and says, you got that Bronco that I wanted. He says, you realize that's probably the first Bronco ever made? And I says, no, I really didn't. And
wow.
Probably a few years later, I figured out that, this was the first one. I had a friend that was a field service engineer for Ford Motor Company down in Houston. His name is Joe DeLeo. And Joe and I worked together on the serial number, and he had a lot of contacts with Ford, and so we figured out that this was probably the first Bronco ever made. And then we figured out that it was made in the Park Allen plant in Michigan, and then they shipped the jigs down to the Michigan truck plant and started building 001.
Oh my gosh, right? And then I heard Jay Leno wanted to buy it too, but Seth got it.
Well, let me the Jay Leno story. Probably need to get my son to tell you that. Somehow or another, he coerced me, my son Reeves Yakubansky out here in the audience. He coerced me into sending a letter to Jay Leno about that Bronco. And I sent a copy of it to Seth. And I sent it to Jay and never heard from him for 4 or 5 weeks. And one night we were sitting at the house at the lake there, and fire was going, and it was cold outside, and the phone rang, and I looked at the phone, and it said private number, and I went, private number? In my head, I was going,
robocall.
Yeah, and I always answer those calls like, hola, ¿qué has hecho? Tell them something in Spanish, and they usually hang up. But I said, maybe I better not do that on this one. That was in my head.
Yeah.
So I just said, hello, and he said, Vinny? And I said, yeah. He says, well, this is Jay Leno. And my son heard that, and he says, that's Jay Leno. And I said, so Jay Leno and I carried on about a 15-minute conversation about that Bronco, and he really never wanted to buy it. He gave me hope that Seth was out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a sucker born every day, right?
No, not a sucker, but somebody that would really appreciate it.
Well, when he finally convinced me, he sent me a text about 9 o'clock at night, and I was watching a kid's baseball game, and it was a text with a picture of that VIN tag, and it said, first Bronco owned by Carroll Shelby, want to talk? And I think I got up from that chair faster than my kid was playing baseball and gave Vinny a call. We worked out a time, and I ripped it to text about 16 straight hours. That dog, I threw the dog in the dually and grabbed a trailer and went straight to Texas. We just ripped it all the way there. I wasn't going to let the truck go once I had a good opportunity. So we went straight there, and we talked for hours now. I think Carolyn, your wife, came down and said, I didn't know if you had stolen my husband or what was going on. She came down to the barn to see what was going on, and that was probably 9 o'clock at night. We still went to 11:30 or so.
Well, and having Aaron Shelby sitting right here, do you remember this vehicle? Dennis, let him use your mic for a sec. I mean, when you were growing up, did you?
So, no, I don't have a recollection of it from being when it was. I was born in '71. I never went to the Shelby Ranch when I was a little kid. My dad went out there, my uncle, quite a bit.
Yeah.
And talked to them about it. And Carol had a bunch of vehicles out there. They don't specifically remember it, but don't doubt that it was out there because there was a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, yeah.
And Carol at the time would wind up with stuff from Ford. And
Sure.
it would kind of like the little red car. You got some other things like that
Right.
you know, he didn't think much of it at the time. It was just a vehicle to him.
Right. It was
And
cans of soup to a grocer. I mean,
You
it's
got
just a product, you know.
You got it. So it was neat to hear the story when I met Seth the first time we started listening to it, and then getting into the background on that was really something special. So
Isn't that interesting?
It's great to run into
Shelby
those things.
is get its fingers into all these things. So cool.
Yeah. Well, Dennis, it sounded like you had some information about the ranch.
That's a different ranch. There's I'm sure Mr. Shelby had a lot of ranches, but there's one out in Marshall, Texas, that's also called the Shelby Ranch. That traded hands, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 years ago, and the guy that bought it, he bought it with all its contents. Fortunately, I was his first guy that he called because I've got an ad in the Dallas Morning News. It's been in there for 34 years now. Wanted dead or alive European sports cars, Shelby Mustangs, Corvettes, whatever. So he called me, so I went out there. Well, there were still Shelbys at the ranch. And in the contract when he bought it, it was everything at the ranch. There were a bunch of Carroll's guns were still there, lots of memorabilia. All the pictures were still on the wall. Furniture was still in it. And this stuff is still there. So as far as crowdsourcing, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some pictures of him because he was to me it looked like from the walls, an avid, proud hunter.
Hold on. Grab the mic. Send it down that way, Vinny. Thank you.
So Carroll, after he left Ford, he went down to Africa for several years, and he was a big hunter in Africa. And then he would hunt in West Texas, out Terlingua and things like that. He was never one to get the blind set up, do all that. It was just a kind of a hobby thing for him.
And that's probably why he liked the Bronco even, because that hunting was in his background, right?
Oh, yeah,
And
most definitely.
Yeah.
So by the time the 80s rolled around and I was kind of spending more time with him, he wasn't really a hunter at that point, loved the outdoors, loved to raise cattle, loved to go look at the deer and other things, but wasn't as much hunting from the 80s on. But the mid-70s, it was a big deal to him.
Well, from what I remember being at the Marshall Ranch, there's a lot of pictures of him hunting, a lot of the game that he did, a lot of the guns were still there, which I just absolutely couldn't believe that the guy that owns it now got all that stuff. But looking back, there was some car photos on the wall, not a ton. It looked like, there was more hunting. But what was really amazing when we went out there, I don't know for a fact that there's a picture of the Bronco out there, but I'd say there might be. There was a lot of documents there. I sat there for hours and hours and hours and looked through them, tried to buy them. He wouldn't sell them to me. I did, however, get 3 Shelbys out of there. And what was amazing is at the barn out there, I don't know if it was Carroll himself, but there were a lot of Shelby parts. Somebody had been working on Shelbys there in the barn and sitting out in the field, which, everybody in the world is going to go try to track this down, but good luck buying it because he won't sell it. There is still a 68 KR 500 convertible, but it's not a 428 car. It is a 427 car that has a tree growing through the engine bay and went all the way through the floor. Now, the guy that owns the ranch, he is also a Shelby guy. He's a neat guy. I'm sure you've talked to him. He will not sell it, but it really is something to see, to walk out there and see one of the rarest GT500 convertibles sitting there with trees growing through it. But I think that might be a cool place to crowdsource. There may be some photos there. I don't know that for a fact, but
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So what we're trying to do here with firstbronco.com is anybody who has any information, just send us a picture. Send us a quick note online, firstbronco.com. We make it easy. All you've got to do is put in a little contact information, upload a picture. Anything that anybody has, we'll be able to receive it and then help document this historic vehicle.
Talk about these pictures right up here on these are some receipts and whatnot.
Yeah, these are some good ones. So on the right over there is the first registration, 1967, and that is highperformancemotors.com. For anyone who didn't know, that was Carroll's dealership, really at the factory there, is kind of the way I would describe it. Then you have the VIN plate. That was a scan or an etching.
Take the paper and pencil.
Yeah.
Penciled it on, so it's had layers and layers of paint on it because Ford had repainted it multiple times. And then this was really interesting, this handwritten manifest from the driver. Now, I received this anonymously, very similar to the crowdsourcing that we're trying to do. And this woman told me, please do not disclose who I am. I got it by text.
Betty Watson, I can do it. No, I'm joking. It's a joke.
And I don't have authorization to give this out, but I think it'd be very useful to you. And I was at dinner with my wife, and I got this text, and it was one of those moments where I got up from dinner, and I had this conversation with her. And this was Pickup Prototype Bronco, and it has the VIN number there, 732000, at Dearborn, Michigan, delivered to Shelby American, Los Angeles. And I just thought that was really interesting. The rest of this is pretty interesting as well. Pick up Porsche 911S, Nashville, Tennessee, delivered to Shelby American. I think that's really interesting.
I'd sure like to have that serial number.
I would love to have that serial number.
It's cut off right below. He does have it. I know. No, it's Seth.
I'll tell you, well,
I like how they spelled Porsche.
I'll tell you what's really interesting to me because over
Look how they spelled
Porsche.
Porch. Actually, it was a porch, 9 feet 11 inches. That's what it was, a front porch.
One of the top things I've always chased for my private collection, bought and sold a lot of, are serial number 1 cars. And there's always a story, because they're supposed to be crushed or whatever. The early cars that I found, a lot of them got pushed out to Canada. I found the first 71 Cuda ever built in Canada, which wasn't 1, it was 11. And the first Firebird ever built was 001. But I don't think I have ever seen any production car that was a 0. Ever. Even a prototype car, I've never seen a VIN tag. What have you guys discovered about that? Because I've literally, for the last 35 years, of just a nut for first and last of things that are built, and I haven't seen that with a 0 on the end.
This is what they would describe as a pre-production unit. So this was the last I don't know how many pre-production units were built, but it would be a pre-production unit built prior to it going into full production. And so we had an email that Vinny had back and forth with some Ford folks, and that's what they described it as a pre-production unit before they went into full production. So the first full production unit should end with a 1, and I don't know, maybe Todd has a little bit of background there.
Yeah, we haven't found number 1 yet. And the way Ford assigned the assembly numbers when they were built, the Bronco may have been a 1, or that may have been an Econoline van or a Ford pickup. The closest one that has been found to this, I believe, is 005. So yeah, this is very unique, and there is a digit in the VIN that signifies, like you said, that it was built at the Allen Park, Michigan production prototype line, where the engineers went through and made sure things fit properly, looked for any other gotchas before they released it to production, like you said. So yeah, this is a big deal.
Yeah, I would imagine if this didn't go to Carroll Shelby, it would have been crushed.
I think that's probably the case. You know, these are like Ford calls them $1 cars, or
right.
You know, the prototypes, and they would go. You know, Willie's dad got a bunch of the early ones too. You got 4 or 6 of them.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we got 6, and we were able to build 3 vehicles out of them.
Yeah.
And they were all from the cemetery in the middle of the test track. And we came out with a transporter, we loaded them up, came back to the shop, and we segregated the fronts from the rears, and that's the way we started the team. Ford didn't have the budgeting at the time to start a race team, so they gave us all the parts we needed. We actually walked down the assembly line and grabbed stuff that we needed.
Do you remember what the earliest number was, or just approximately?
Well, mine was 00. It was low.
It was real early. Are you talking about stove?
Yeah, the stove. But,
yeah, and I don't know if we know the number on that one, but it was early.
Yeah, those were all written off by Ford because they'd already been crushed, you know, in the crush test and stuff like that. And unfortunately, it got re-crushed again. The guy that
3 times.
Yeah, the guy that bought it from me. You know, at that time we didn't know. And my dad goes, you know what, it's just taking up space, it's obsolete, we need to move on. So we did, and about a year later I go, you know, I saw this guy at Parker, and I go, you want to sell that Bronco back? And he goes, doesn't exist anymore. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, my partner flipped it end over end in a sand wash, and he was so bent out of shape he decided to cut the whole back end off and turn it into a tractor pull car. So I go, well, that's done.
You know what, Seth, maybe we could do, because there's so much collective knowledge here.
There is.
Let's just, because, I mean, we're going to run out of time. These stories will go on for 2 days.
Yeah.
Let's just do one at a time and go down and get their Bronco information, couple of minutes, because I happen to know Gary, president of Shelby, selling more trucks lately than cars. And then we can come back around and finish up that
I
way.
think that's a great idea, Alan. We'd love to hear kind of Gary's view of where things are going with the truck market. You know, we've heard stories that you're selling more Shelby trucks than you are cars.
Well, you know, Seth, sometimes rumors are true.
That's wild, isn't it? Just back to the roots.
You know, it's crazy.
It's
like
awesome.
5 years ago, it was probably 5% of our business. And now it's probably 75, 80% of what we do.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious.
Wow.
You know, but
well, who doesn't want a 700 and how many horsepower?
well, 755.
755 horsepower truck, crew cab, four-wheel drive.
You need that to get to work.
Yeah.
Or chase cattle out on the ranch, right?
That's right.
Right? I mean, why not? I've done that actually in Nebraska. I went out and did a little cattle chasing with the Shelby F-150.
Because they take a Raptor and do some wild stuff with it, too. So
we
if you
do
want to
that,
get
too.
airborne, you know, that's another thing. But
And we got a big diesel pickup. I mean, trucks are hot right
who
now.
has seen the picture or the video of Gary doing a burnout with the diesel dually with a Mustang on a trailer doing a burnout on the trailer? I know you have. You guys all got to Google that now. Dual burnout.
Shelby dual burnout.
That's what it is? Okay, good.
It's cool. It's cool.
So what do you think about Bronco and all what's happening and new one coming out and all what they're doing with these classic ones? It's amazing.
Well, you know, the good old days are today.
Yeah.
They really are, because you got, you know, if you take a look at that old one, you know, it's got those classic lines and it's something we can all get excited about. But man, if you've driven one, they don't drive so good.
Not till Seth gets
Until
done with
Seth
them.
gets done with them. And then you got that 5-liter Coyote, you know, and maybe you put a supercharger on it or turbos or, you know, you just do silly stuff.
Yeah,
right?
he says he goes 100 miles an hour, let go of the wheel. And
I think it's 120, and it's two fingers on the wheel with an iPhone going to video it, and then I take my hands off the wheel. And so the only thing I can do is trust these boys with all of my life and all my safety, and they take care of me. And so far so good.
That's amazing.
And I would say if you want to see an 825 horse genuine Shelby Supercharger, come at 11:30, and we'll debut the modern day Warrior.
Oh my God! Well, there you go. You got a little sneak peek of what's under the hood over there. All right. Last thoughts?
Well, trucks are hot.
Yeah.
And we'll supply some parts for this program. We've got a lot of cool things, and you know, Shelby's always about performance.
Yeah.
So you know, superchargers, big Fox shocks, you know, all kinds of stuff. Wheels.
He looks at
tires.
his watch, and I go, "Your watch is like 5 minutes fast." He goes, 10 minutes. He goes, "At Shelby, everything's fast."
Everything's
I'm always
fast.
trying to
Hey,
keep
if
up
you
with
saw
him.
me
laughing. That's what I was laughing
100,
about.
120 miles an hour means I got a couple gears left. So.
I'm telling you, Alan, I'm always trying to keep up with Gary. You know, he's got all these Raptors that keep going and going, so we had to go 825 horse just to keep up with him.
Oh dear!
There
All right,
it is right
next
there.
up, tell the world who you are and give us a little Bronco talk.
Mike Dorvier, I'm the chairman of the La Jolla Concours,
Ah.
and I've had the pleasure of driving one of Seth's products. You know, I'm around shiny, original, authentic, completely restored cars, so a lot of the ones that I drive have less than 100 horsepower.
Yeah, right.
So it's tough getting up the hill sometimes leaving La Jolla. But it sure is a pleasure. It's something that you know, I think is generational right now with folks in their late 40s, 50s, 60s that just love the authentic. When you go out to his booth and you see those trucks, they're as original as they can possibly be. But you get in it, you turn the key, it's a brand new vehicle, drives like a Range Rover. It's got cup holders for when Seth goes to Starbucks. It's got everything you need, you know, and it Bluetooth, wireless. So when I'm commuting to work back and forth every day, if I want to take an old car, I'll jump in.
Look at that.
I'll jump in something like that before I jump in an original car.
Yeah,
So
you know
I
what?
think it's great.
I felt like I missed the Bronco thing until I was about 30 years old. A buddy of mine had one, and I started looking at it going, you know, I always knew about Broncos, but it wasn't my thing. And, man, we're like discovering these for the first time, a lot of us. And that is going to be your business, is folks that have discovered them, heard they didn't drive good maybe, and kind of left it alone because who doesn't, you know, want to have a nice driving machine? You fix that, Seth.
Well, you know, I think that's a big part of what we do, but I think it's also we displayed at the La Jolla Concours last year, and you know, Michael gave us an amazing position in front of 2 vintage Bugattis and 1 brand new Bugatti.
They didn't like that so much. It did win Best of Show, the one that he was parked right in front of.
Yeah, well.
And so, you know, the cool thing was we had so much attention around that little Bronco versus the Bugattis. It was unbelievable. I really surprised me how much attention the little Bronco got from the participants as well as the owners there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's awesome. It's a
All
great
right.
product.
Thank you, sir. I want to come to your Concours here now that I've heard that there's Broncos there. Mr. Strope. Oh, you have a microphone, yes. tell us give us a little bit about yourself and your Bronco story. We heard a little bit of it, but give us some more.
Well, my name's Willie Strop, and I got involved in basically the Bronco from day one. I was in 7th grade, and I think I had the opportunity to go back in our graveyard at the shop, and we had frames, we had front ends, and just a bunch of pieces that a little kid would love to put something together. And I worked on that for probably about 4 years, and then I had the opportunity after I got out of the service to go ahead and drive the Stove Bronco. And the Stove Bronco originally was built for Jim Loomis, who was one of our team drivers from the very beginning when we used to race in the sand at Pismo Beach and Brawley. But, the Bronco is second to none. The transfer case was bulletproof. Dana 44 front end, you couldn't beat it. I only had one mishap, and it was at Parker, and we pre-ran, and we thought we had it dialed in. And I looked at my co-driver, and he kind of shook his head, and I go, well, it's too late now. And we flew over a road, flipped end over end about 3 times. Oh. And the transfer case just it was intact. It just kind of fell down to the ground. And Bronco was shortened by about 1.5 feet in the front and 1.5 feet in the rear.
Oh, my God.
But safety, couldn't beat the safety. I
Unreal.
mean, it's just never had any problems, never had to walk home except for that one time.
Yep.
And I did that for almost 12 years.
Yep. You said you were in the service. Thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you very much.
Appreciate that. That's awesome. Tell us real quick, Strop and Son, you guys still doing this stuff?
No, we shut the doors right after, not too much further after 9/11. It was pretty tough.
Yeah.
You know, we did Ford Motor Company's brake testing facility, and we did all the media vehicles for Ford.
So you got a lot of history with Ford Motor Company.
Oh yeah,
That's
which
awesome.
I still work with people with Ford today.
Yeah.
On a volunteer basis for fabulous Fords that come up every year.
That's awesome.
So if you come out to that, it'll be at Anaheim Stadium this year, and I'll be there.
Fantastic. Well, again, this is the brain trust of the Bronco world. Dennis Collins from Collins Brothers Jeep, also a big Bronco fan.
I'm a big Bronco fan. I'm a big fan of what Seth and Gateway have done because we talked early on when he was really getting after this because he's like, you guys restore like 70 or 80 Jeeps a year. I was like, yeah, we do, all the way frame, all the way up. I was like, that Bronco tub is a whole lot more work than a CJ. I said, that is tough. One of my very best customers, we have his Bronco in. I've been calling you to bug you to help me out on some of these body panels. So when you guys see the prices of these Broncos, it is an extreme amount of work what he's doing to get these to the level they're at. So I think they're fantastic. But I've got a question to you.
Yeah, sure, Dennis.
So Bronco Zero, which is what I would call it since it's not one, there was 3 different versions of that truck. It's when it left, and it has promotional photographs, correct?
It does.
And then Carroll Shelby got it, which is awesome, arguably the most famous guy out there with Ford, definitely with Mustang. And then in the condition you found it. So which route are you going to go in the restoration? Are you going to go back to the way it left, or the way that Carroll had it, or the way you found it?
You know, that's the ultimate question we have here. And you know, we heard and we've pretty well validated that the V8 in this Bronco was installed at Ford. We had always thought when we first got it, talking to Aaron, that, you know, just assumed that the Bronco went to Shelby American, and that's where the first V8 was installed. But it doesn't look like that at all. It looks like it was installed by Ford as the first V8. And Todd probably has some history there. He's looked over it as one of the top historians. He understands the unique prototype features here. And so it was used in all 3 configurations, Dennis. The TV commercial for Ford for the launch of the Bronco was using this Bronco. They put it in the Roadster version, the hardtop, and the half cab as you see it here. We've proven all of that, and then they've painted it multiple times. It came out teal, and then it went red. We're thinking it may be one more color, and then red again by Carroll Shelby. And so they used it multiple times. We had evidence that looks like it was the one that jumped over the dune on the TV commercial, and it's just such a piece of history. We don't really know, but we're open to ideas how it should be restored back.
That's a tough one because normally to me, if I found something significant, I either leave it or I go back to the way it left the factory. But the fact that it was Carroll Shelby's, I don't know. It'd be interesting in the crowdsourcing. Maybe you take a vote and see which way to go. I know the Concours, your answer is going to be it needs to be the way it left from the factory.
Absolutely.
Gary's going to be absolutely not. It needs to be the way Shelby had it. And owner number 2 is like, leave it alone.
I say we do some cage fighting in here and see who wins.
I think you leave it like it is. I wouldn't touch that car. I'd leave
That
it
was my-
just because that's the history of it, right?
I was talking to my daughter Kelsey this morning. And we had this up in conversation, which I think is interesting. And she said, "What's your initial gut?" Because you usually go with that. Well, my initial gut was to be to leave it like it is. And then you have to look at value, because obviously, I don't know what you paid for it. Probably nobody needs to know that, but it's extremely valuable in my opinion. But does it add value for you to go in and spend $100 or $150 grand to get it to its pre-production stages like it was? Or is it worth what it is because it is what it is in the condition it's in?
I'm curious what he paid for it, because I know he paid 100 times what Carroll did. And if he paid 100 times and deflation dollars what he paid for it, somebody's got to do that math. Inflation dollars.
I'll tell you, I first had contact with Vinny back in 2000, I think. He was talking with another fellow historian, Andrew Norton, and myself about the truck, and we said, wow, this is a fantastic, neat truck. And then he asked for a valuation on it. And, Broncos were coming up in value about that time, and we were talking, oh, yeah, it's got some Shelby provenance or something. We said, this is a pretty special Bronco. We think it's probably worth at least $15,000 to $16,000. And that's as recent as 2000. That's that's 19 years ago now. But to me, that's modern times. That shows you how the value has increased.
That's a good question for you. You wrote the book on Bronco.
What
would you do?
That's a really tough question. So I have found a lot of this Bronco was used in a lot of Ford advertising materials over the years. In fact, I've traced it as new as 1974. Ford was cheap with their advertising. They had really good airbrushers. So nine years after their introduction, there was still a picture of this Bronco in their materials. So there is one photo of it as a wagon. It's a teal color from, I think, 1967, and I really like that color. I think it would look good that way, but my second favorite, I think, would be to leave it the way Vinny has it. He's been a fantastic caretaker of it. He owned it for 38, 39 years. I mean, you compare how he took care of this truck compared to Craig Barrett's Little Red now and the condition they have. I mean, that thing's a blank canvas, and everyone knows that it's going to be...
You just called him Craig Barrett, by the way, which is really funny.
I'm sorry, Craig Jackson. I'm sorry.
Everybody knew who he was talking about.
Mr. Barrett, rest in peace.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Anyway, that's a blank slate for Little Red, and everyone knows it's gonna have a lot of new parts on it. This truck is really, from a historical standpoint, is really unique because it still has all these cool prototype parts on it, and we're still peeling the onion and figuring everything out on it.
Hand your mic to Aaron Shelby. I'm just curious what he thinks.
Yeah, well, I kind of like the idea of leaving it how it was when Seth got it. And you take it there because, as Dennis was saying, that's kind of where it is. And to me, that's something that's important. It's got a little bit of all the parts on there. It's got a little bit of all the provenance in it from that perspective. It's a really unique vehicle. And I think that's a neat way to have it and present it that way. So I don't know if there's a right way to it. It's just it's more of an emotional feel.
Right.
I think there's plenty shiny ones out there that you could park next to this one, and I think that history.
I think we should crowdsource. So is it Vinny, or is it Ford Motor Company, or Shelby? You should put a poll out there for all while you're working on it, and then unveil which one you decided, because you're the owner. And then which one, to see if you picked what the world was thinking.
That's a great idea, Alan. I said, the one draw that we have is Ford has asked us from the Bronco team that's developing the new Bronco, they would like us to work with them and market with them when they launch the new Bronco. So, the two alternatives we have is take a Bronco like this and fully restored and a 825 horse Shelby Supercharger and put that next to the new Bronco, or have the very first Bronco next to the new Bronco. And if it's the first Bronco, it seems like it should be restored. But the part of the reason that I fell in love with this Bronco from the beginning, honestly, is I love barn finds, and my collection was 15 all original paint Broncos and a couple of Shelbys, all survivor vehicles. And so that's really where my heart lies, is the survivor side of things.
Do you have any pictures of it as it is right now?
Yeah, those pictures where they were. Can you go back?
Just curious. And
Those
then-
are as it is today.
Vinny, let's ask Vinny. Well,
yeah, there you
that
go.
is how right now.
That's it, and it's in our booth, Lux 3. That's
Oh, it's
exactly
in your
as
booth.
it sits. It
Yeah.
is.
Oh my gosh. So Vinny, what would you like to see?
Well, whenever Seth first contacted me and we talked about this Bronco, he kind of talked about taking it back to the white and red and buying a Yamaha 75 Yamaha MX 400 and putting it in the back end like I had it during the day. I like that red and white idea, but this is fine. The only thing I don't like about this Bronco is I was pushing it out of the shop one day, and the tailgate, that thing never had a dent on it, and I pushed it out of the shop, and it rolled into a tree. And that still torques me, but I took real good care of that Bronco.
You know, I had a situation one time. I had an El Camino, and I took the driveline out of it because I was going to tow it. Took the driveline out, went and got in my big old truck, and turned around to back up. Thing was rolling, and I looked where it was rolling to. It was going to roll off about a 20-foot drop into a stream, and I thought, I have a choice. I either let it go into the stream or I back into my own truck. So I hate backing into my own truck, but I had to do it.
You know, Ellen, when you come to our concours, we have docents there that'll take folks around and they'll talk about some of the special, unique cars that are on the field. And there's often half a dozen cars that are one of one, right? It's the only one left in existence. Those docents, inevitably, every time when they do this, we actually have a survivor class. We'll have 8 or 10 survivors. So that story you just told about pushing it out of the garage, hitting the tree, the dent is still there. Leave the dent. I mean, that's the story, right? When they walk
is
around,
so
they talk about the
cool.
history of the car, and it has a personality and a life.
Actually, on the other side of that Bronco, where the chrome comes around the bed, we were up in Wyoming whenever I was working for. Took engineering up there, and we took it up to the mountain behind Casper, and I decided I'd just go down a snow trail, and so I put it in four-wheel drive. Well, I wasn't a real good four-wheel driver, not as good as I thought, and the road had a little bit of a slant to it, and I got out there on that snow, and that thing started going sideways, even on the road. And I told my wife, "Oh, get out, hold it, it's going to hit a pine tree." She got out, and she was pushing on the back end of it, and she didn't let go quick enough. She got her hand caught between the chrome on the other. It's on the other side, and it's kind of got a little dent in the chrome where her hand and the pine tree made contact.
Oh my gosh!
So she's real weak. Yeah, she fainted. So I had to go out there and stick my knee up between her legs against the pine tree to keep her from falling down in the snow. And then finally she came to, and then I said, "Can you stand here?" She said, "Yeah." So I went and put the tailgate down and put her in the back of the Bronco and got a bunch of snow and put it in the ice chest and put her hand in the ice chest and took her back down. I was going to take her to the hospital. By the time we got down to the house there at Casper with the snow and everything, her hand wasn't swollen anymore. So there's 2 dents in that. One on the other side in the chrome for my wife's hand between the pine tree and that chrome and the tree in the back.
How does she fit back there with a motorcycle?
Well, the motorcycle wasn't in it then. I'd already sold that motorcycle the motorcycle at the time so I could buy a washer and a dryer for diapers.
Oh God, that is awesome. These are the great stories that obviously are going to start surfacing. And firstbronco.com, make sure you guys check that out. Seth, what do you think the new Bronco is going to do to the value of the 66 through 77 Bronco when the new one comes out?
I'm very bullish about this. I think that the new Bronco is just going to enhance the awareness of the original Bronco, and there's so much enthusiasm around this just really unique vehicle. I mean, what other vehicle do you know that was built from 66 to 77 with virtually zero changes? A Camaro, a Corvette, a Mustang, everything is changing every couple of years, the body style at least. And so this is such a unique vehicle. It was just never changed for that long period of time. and it has a unique following. No one believes that they still exist. We do still find barn finds. We just found one, second owner vehicle. There's a film that'll come out in a few weeks on Barrett Jackson, and it is a unique film. The guy's first car. He was the second owner, sitting in a barn for 15, 20 years, and we got it all on film. Coming out of the barn, pulled out of the barn. Awesome. And so they still exist. We still find them. Dennis still finds them for sure. He finds all kinds of barn finds. And I think that the new Bronco is just going to help the awareness of the original. And the way I describe it, if this is going to be a four-door Bronco, if it is going to be a Jeep competitor, I think that this is the millennials' vehicle, and the millennials' parent will be buying what we produce. And that's kind of the way I would describe it. Those diehards, those folks that Todd knows, they are still going to race that original Bronco. They're still going to rock climb that original Bronco. They're not going to give it up easily. And so there's kind of three segments there. There's the millennial that's going to buy the new Bronco, the diehards that still trail these Broncos and and basically Baja race these things. And then there's that third category, and that's the millennial's parent that'll buy one of these.
Well, there's some very famous Baja racers. Seems like Parnelli Jones, didn't he race a Bronco in '68? Yeah, and it seemed like that vehicle's still in a museum somewhere. I think Rod Hall maybe owned that one. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Willie should talk more about this, but yeah, Big Ole is still
That's what it is.
in existence. It's at the Peterson Museum right now. And
Is it really?
Yeah. It's owned by Parnelli, and he farms it out to various displays, but it's still very much alive. My co-racer and I own one of the original stop racers that won the '69 1000 that Willie and his dad built. So we love the old race cars. It's at another show here in the Valley today. So
that's awesome.
Willie I've loved talking to Willie over the years. I'm one of the more modern Baja racers, but we race an old Bronco, and it has the same paint scheme that Willie and his dad used to have. So it's really a lot of fun to do that. And Willie can tell stories till the cows come home.
I won the Baja 500 in 2006 with our class that we were running, and Baja racing is grueling. Really, it's ultimately about preservation of the machine, because if you don't, to win the race, you have to finish the race, right? And so, but maybe, yeah, give us a second on that.
Well, running Baja definitely was a tough way to go.
Yeah.
I think I ran about 8 of them and won 2. But, after I got out it was 2000, I guess, we went in the expedition, and the Bronco was sidelined. And after that was over, about 2 months later, I ended up at the chiropractor, and he goes, "What'd you do?" And he took an X-ray on my back, and that was after my neighbors brought me in a pickup truck.
Oh, jeez.
And, we only had like 4.5 inches of travel in the early days.
Yeah.
Now, the cars have like 30 inches of travel, and they're twice as fast. And Big Ole, my dad and Big Ole ran with Parnelli, and they were the first car to win overall over the motorcycles. And they used to start the motorcycles before.
I love he calls it motorcycle.
Or cycle.
Yeah, I love it.
But anyway, they came up on them real quick, and all of a sudden the cars started getting quicker than the bikes. And so now they start them a lot later, I think.
Yeah, it's awesome.
In fact, I ran over one time and going through a sand wash, and I couldn't see it. I looked up out of the corner of my eye, and the guy was sitting on the bank. And I stuck my head down, I heard a clunk, and I go, well, that must have been it.
Sorry about that!
So, yeah, it's, and all the experience and different things you face every time you run Baja, it's different every time.
I love, Seth, that you brought Dennis Collins up here, because in essence, if you look at Ford Motor Company visited Sears and Roebuck back in the day when they had the assembly line to figure out how to do things. And you guys are interacting. Of course, Dennis is the Jeep guy and you're the Bronco guy. And it kind of reminds me of that. It's like you guys really want to help each other. And in many ways, you're competitors, but not really, because a Bronco and a Jeep are two different animals. But I love that. That's what
absolutely.
this
I mean, I took a trip down to Dallas, and we spent a couple hours going through your shop just to understand how in the world can he get 70 Jeeps done. I had no idea how he could get 70
He owns a wrecking
Jeeps
yard.
done.
That's how. He got right behind his yard. That's helpful.
So we've got 60,000 square feet, and we built things on an assembly line. And so, essentially this is an assembly line where our goal is to produce one a week. And so right now we're producing about two a month, heading for 3 a month, and then eventually our goal is to be 1 per week or 4 a month. And, the only way we can conceive to do this is because of the complexity that Dennis was talking about. We have to do this in a way that takes a lot of space and then allows us to have quality controls each step of the way. Yeah. So then by the time we get done with it, we tell our clients they can take a road trip in it directly. In fact, our client here, Justin, he asked if he could drive this Bronco from St. Louis to his home here in Scottsdale when we're done with it, and we said absolutely. Yeah. We feel confident of that. So that's awesome. That's the way we want to build every one of our trucks. And, Dennis has been great, honestly, with everything you've taught.
Yeah, I mean, our first conversations were also about parts manufacturing, because I've been manufacturing parts for our Jeep since roughly 2002. But I was looking at what you're doing. I was like, man, Seth, that is going to be really hard to scale. I mean, everything can be done, but to scale it to you're going to end up building a lot more than what you're saying right now, because the demand is going to be so high.
It really boils down to a Herculean task.
It's tough.
And that's the good part. The bad part is it's a big job. The good part is you're not going to have a lot of competition, I don't think, at your level, because it's such a monster job. And I think that these folks here for you, and I know he already is doing this and you're starting, is that crowdsourcing. Because you folks need to know this job ain't easy. And if we want to see more of those on the road, when you see one, you need to think Seth Burgett.
I agree. What you're doing is not easy. It's tough.
Yeah.
I appreciate what you're doing.
Crowdsourcing.
Thanks for commenting on that, Dennis. I mean, we feel it every day.
Yeah, I still do too, and I've been doing the Jeeps for 34 years. But my average employee in my shop right now has been with me for 26 years.
Whew,
so that's how I'm able to get the 76 to 86 Jeep CJs out quickly and efficiency, because my guys, we've done in the thousands now. But also my comparison to what you're doing, Grand Wagoneer restorations are not easy. Mm-hmm. They're not. We do 2 a month. They've been pre-sold for basically the last 11 years, and I will not do any more than 2 a month. Wow. I don't care what it takes. Like I said, the body work that you're having to go through on those Broncos is just absolutely brutal, and yours are done perfectly. It's just time consuming.
How can people help you? I mean, is there a crowdsourcing? Are you hoping they'll visit the website or come into your place? Or
I think there's one clear area, Alan. We would love to talk with any of the engineers or any of the technicians at Ford when these things were built originally, because, we got one client who said, he was from Michigan, he's from Detroit, he said, we all joked about it, but we'd never buy a Bronco that was built on a Monday or a Friday. And so, there's a lot that happened at the factory that we'd like to learn about. Yeah. And so if we had a couple of folks stop by our booth, one was, I think, Sean talked to him. I think he was a technician who built these things originally. We'd love to talk to those folks and get to know them better and understand some of the stories and some of the history here, because, Dennis has got it nailed. It is a tough job. And honestly, I've not seen somebody work as hard as you do. I was at your shop for a couple hours, and this man works hard every single day.
He does.
Unfortunately, I'm still there 6 days a week. 10 years ago, my wife made me stop going to the office on Sundays.
That's awesome. So we have about 3 or 4 minutes. Is there any questions out there in the audience? Because I think, I think helping Seth with this task is going to be something that folks, you can connect with him if you call them at Gateway Bronco. If you have information, send an email, make a phone call, because remember, this is going out worldwide. And if you want to communicate with any of these folks, you can probably get a hold of them through Seth. And so
yeah, absolutely. And so my number's out there, 314-302-6988, and that's 302 is from the Ford Mustang 302, and I've had that since the beginning of time. That's awesome. So just text me, and I'll get back with you. Katie is here to help, and she will absolutely make sure we get you to the right people. But any kind of questions you have about the Bronco or about what we're doing, glad to share anything. And on the flip side, if you've got any information about the Bronco or an old Bronco sitting in the woods or barn or otherwise, we're always interested in that.
All right, I got a microphone if anybody's got a question for any of the guys here. Are we good? You got a question? Go. What kind of power plants?
Yeah, so what kind of powertrain are we using? We're exclusively using the Coyote powertrain. So it's a Coyote 5-liter engine out of the new Mustang, and it is nearly bulletproof. You know, when I tell the guys I'm going to take a Bronco out for a gentle test drive, they all go, is it really going to be a gentle test drive or is it going to be a shakedown? And so Sean's shaking his head right now. And so, you know, these things are bulletproof. I redline them every time I drive them, and they just keep taking it. They never leak a bit of oil. We've never had a problem with a Coyote. And now we're putting the genuine Shelby Supercharger on top of the Coyote engine, and all stainless exhaust with catalytic converters that go all the way back. You can light the fires on this thing, pull it out of your garage with an open vehicle. Your clothes don't smell. It's a perfect powertrain. Then we put the 6-speed transmission that's essentially the same one out of the F-150, a high-performance version.
Well, there you have it. Would you put the all the guys' faces back up there? Maybe if you want to get their information, where they're from, snap a picture of that with your cell phone or whatever. If you want to get a hold of them, reach out to Seth Burgett, Gateway Bronco, at 11:30 here. Which is about an hour and a half from now. You guys are going to have an unveiling. Yes,
we'll have an unveiling of the first Bronco built under the Ford license, and it's a 100% brand new Bronco built in 2018. Everything is new. Our goal was to beat Gary, and that's a tough task. Because
Gary at Shelby over here.
Gary builds an amazing truck. The Baja version of the Ford Raptor is just truly a rock star. And our goal was to beat those specs 0 to 60, to beat those specs 60 to 0 to stop quicker, and then to outperform it on the highway, which is a tough task.
Don't worry, Gary will come back at you.
I know he will.
The battle has begun.
Are you unveiling that in your booth or on the stage?
We're going to unveil this at our booth. It's Lux 3, and we're between BMW and Tesla in the Salon Showcase.
Where you enter, right? Where you enter?
Well, where we enter, and then you'll turn towards the Salon Showcase.
Okay.
That's where it'll be.
Okay.
And then we'll have Vinny there. We'll have Willie there. They can answer some questions about the history of the first Bronco. And we'll have the owner of this beautiful Bronco here. And we'd love to be able to have everybody join us.
Well, listen, first of all, you guys are all awesome. Thank you so much. Special thanks for Aaron Shelby coming all the way from Detroit out here. He was at the Detroit Auto Show. A lot of Shelby action going on right this moment. But
oh, yeah.
How about we give it up for our Bronco experts here? All right. Thank you guys very much. Gateway Bronco, Seth Burgett, thank you. And don't forget, Wayne Carini going to be up here in just a couple of minutes if you want to hang out, hit a bathroom run. We'll be back in a few minutes.